Hey, this is Daniel Grove with Daniel Grove Photography, and I'm here at the beautiful Dominion Country Club, and I'm about to do my talk for Photo SA. Photo SA is a monthly group of photographers that meet to discuss, to learn from each other, and also they do photo contests and giveaways and lots of really cool stuff. So if you're a photographer, I highly suggest you be a part of a community, and Photo SA is a really great one to be a part of. And it is hosted and run by Jim Landers of Jim Landers Photography School. So I'm about to start my talk. We're going to be talking about my creative photography, my special effects. I hope you learned something and are inspired. Thanks.
We have a special speaker today. I say that every time, they're all special. Anyone who comes and spends their time to share their knowledge is special. We love people like that. And so we love Daniel for coming over here and sharing his thoughts, his passion about the things that he likes to do. And so I'll let him take it away from here. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for coming this evening. Like I said, you could have been somewhere else, could be in bed, but you're here. So thank you guys. And Jim, thanks so much for doing this and for helping the photography community. It really means a lot, and I do think you're affecting the whole city as far as photographers are concerned. So we really appreciate that. Yeah, my name is Daniel Grove. I'm a local photographer. I live in Universal City, which is basically Schertz, Cibolo, Converse area, in case you've never been to that tiny city of Universal City. And I do a lot of kinds of photography. What I'm known for is what's called cosplay, which stands for costume play, characters, comic book characters, superheroes, all kinds of nerdy, geeky stuff. And you'll see that in just a minute. I'm going to probably have a slideshow just going of some of my favorite works while I talk. Hopefully it's not too distracting. We'll see. If you guys aren't listening to me and you're just looking at the screen saying ooh and ah, I guess I'll have to hit stop, but we'll see. So I cover lots of different types of photography. One of the big things that drives me is creativity and uniqueness and trying to not necessarily be better than other people, but I just want to be the best at what I do, and I want to have fun while I'm doing it, and I want to pay my bills while doing it. Yeah, everyone, yeah, we get that, right? And I'm not there yet. I'm not making loads of money off this stuff, not yet. And I have not quite found my perfect target market. That's always an ongoing thing that we're all dealing with, I'm sure, is finding the people that want you. And also finding people that you want. So I'm working towards that goal, and Jim has helped a lot with the business. He's been coaching me and just really expanding my mind and my horizons on what a photography business can be. So that's where I'm at right now. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of what I do and how I do it, I kind of have to give a little bit of backstory. So to explain, why I'm doing what I do. And how I got here. So it all kind of goes back to my childhood. Don't worry, I won't give you a whole long. This isn't a therapy session. But as a child, I was watching a lot of science fiction, watching lots of cartoons, always a creative kid. My whole family drew. We're all very artsy and artsy-fartsy and always making something. I was homeschooled during middle school and I kind of got into a lot of weird hobbies. That sounds like a bad thing, but one of them was 3D graphics. So through questionable means, I got professional 3D programs on my computer, which I later deleted when I realized it was highly illegal what I was doing. But I learned to do 3D graphics, similar to what they do in movies. And you see these wild things in Avengers and these superhero movies. That 3D creation of making fake things through computer graphics and computer generated images and simulations, that's what I just got into because I like that stuff. So I learned that. When I discovered Microsoft Paint on Windows 98, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I can draw digitally. I'm not running out of paper, I'm not running out of pencils. I can draw forever. And that digital art really just clicked in my head, and I was really inspired, and I wanted to make the most out of this digital art thing. Moving on later, I discovered Photoshop, which was awesome. Playing with images that I could find online and manipulate them, blending modes, basic effects and things like that. It was really easy to play with. I was just really enthralled by what I could make on a computer. So a few years later, coming into my high school years, is when I discovered photography. So I always considered myself an artist of whatever means, whether I was drawing, whether I was making stuff with Legos as a kid, or if I was making something on a computer. I'm always been an artist. Just the media that I use is what changes. And my current media, which I am in love with and very passionate about, is photography. So when I'm taking photos, I don't really consider myself as taking photos. I don't say, oh, I'm taking a picture. I say I'm making art with my camera. The sensor, the CMOS sensor is my canvas. And the light coming through my lens is, the paint strokes or the pencil dashes and dots and whatever. So I'm painting onto the sensor of my camera, and then I'm taking that to my computer and I'm enhancing it, or I'm drawing something out, or I'm adding stuff that wasn't there. A lot of times you'll see things that are not even real or possible in the real world. I'm adding those things later. So it's this big artistic process to me where I'm sculpting and making and improving something. And it all starts in my head. Usually. Sometimes I take a photo, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this photo. I don't know if I can even erase the background. I don't know if I can do what I want, but it turns out to work out somehow. I get lucky, and there's some talent in there too, but there's also luck sometimes. So yeah, big creative process for me, and I really enjoy it, and so do my clients apparently, which is why I'm still doing it. So yeah, later in high school, around my sophomore, junior year, I graduated in 2007 at Canyon High School in New Braunfels, so I'm kind of young. I feel like I'm old, but you know, that's neither here nor there. So I discovered portraiture, and I am a big extrovert. I love people. I could meet someone on death row and become their best friend in 2 minutes. Like, I just love meeting people. I love hearing their stories, and I like talking with people and hearing people's hearing their story really. And portraiture was kind of an expression of this people-person mentality that I had. So when I took pictures of people, I felt like I was capturing, hopefully, if I did a good job, it's capturing their essence, capturing their personality. And with my creative photography, I feel like I could take that to the next level. I could make them do something that they love. Like, sure, you can take a picture of a pretty girl sitting on a chair, like anywhere, but maybe you don't know that they're into archery, or they love horseback riding, or they're a painter, or they're a ballet dancer their whole life. You just didn't know, you didn't think to ask, and they didn't think to bring it up. But what if you captured them doing something that they love, or maybe something they've done their whole life, or something their parents did that means something, you know, just taking it to that next level. Not just looking pretty and smiling at a camera, but like maybe doing something, or wearing, you know, wearing something that represents something that they love. So that's sort of one aspect of some of my creative photography that I love to do, because it takes the portraiture to a next level. And you're not just capturing someone looking good, but you're capturing someone looking good and maybe looking awesome, or doing something exciting and interesting. And it's a photo that you want to look at, and you're like, wow, like, what are they doing? They're really good at that thing, or maybe what would it be like if I was that person doing this thing? So that thought process of the viewer, you know, I want to inspire and cultivate some imagination on the viewer side too when they look at my photos. So I moved to Austin, and I'll go ahead and play some of my photos for you. Like I said, hopefully it's not too distracting. And this is just a random mixture of all kinds of fun stuff that I do. So I moved to Austin, and I went to school there, not for photography though. I went for music and ministry. But my photography had already kind of been picking up speed after leaving high school. I didn't press play here. And I discovered, like I said earlier, that I could be creative with my photos, and I could take it to the next level and really tell a cool story, or just inspire and make my photos more artful and more interesting. You know, I didn't know that was possible before that. I had a yearning to be more creative, because I've always been addicted to creativity. It's kind of like my drug. This is a Brave photo shoot, Disney princess. And then I discovered, like, I can merge these two things, that I love nerdiness, I love special effects, I love Star Wars. You might not notice, but there's a Millennium Falcon in the background. It's kind of hidden there. So I love these things, but I also love photography. So how can I like mesh the two and make something unique? Because at that time, I'm seeing a lot more now, probably because I know where to look. But I didn't see the stuff being done in high school or even in college. So you know, I just wanted to merge these two things that I was in love with, and that's what brought me to where I am now. But yeah, early in my photography, I felt like my creativity was not like fully being expressed or harnessed, and I wanted to find that satisfaction. And like, you know, maybe you guys can relate, but when you take a photo and you look at the finished product and you're satisfied with it, you're like, this is great. You know, this is a beautiful hummingbird photo, like we were talking about, you know, nature and stuff, or this is a great sports shot, or this family portrait is just beautiful and they're gonna love it for the rest of their life. Like, that satisfaction you get is what I get when I have a well-done photo that's finished. And it kind of takes you into the world. You know, you see a fantasy photo with fairies or, you know, Star Wars characters, and you wonder, like, what would it be like to be in that world? And a good photo will take you there. A bad photo might just make you wonder about it, or, you know, might scroll past it. But a good in-depth photo really puts you in that world. And that's my goal. So you got to find, now you guys may not be into this stuff, and that's totally fine. But my point is, you need to find what makes you happy as a photographer. Also, it pays the bills. There's also that. And you know, if you're creative and you stay at it long enough, you can find those things that make you happy and that pays the bill, and they'll crossroads, and you can be an expert on that. You can specialize in that thing. That's the goal. Yeah, but I do encourage you to try all kinds of things. I don't know how long you guys have been into photography, or if you just do one category, if you just kind of do everything. But I encourage you to try lots of things so that you can find that thing that most, clicks, the thing that makes you most happy, and really go after that. Don't dump the rest of the stuff, but trying that stuff to where you can find something that really satisfies your artistic heart or your artistic part of your brain. So just putting this out there, I'm going to talk more about my creative stuff. But if you guys have any questions, for me about, I don't care what it is, business, Photoshop, how I got to where I am right now, just write them in your phones and keep them on hold, and we'll answer questions later if you have any. If not, that's fine. So around 2013, I had a Facebook post. One of my friends wrote about that she was getting married. And, I knew they were kind of into Star Wars, and I'm definitely way too much into Star Wars. I'm actually reading a book this morning. It's a Star Wars book. That's how much of a nerd I am. I read Star Wars books. It's pretty helpless. So I wrote them and I said, hey, wouldn't it be so funny if we did a lightsaber photo at your wedding? And they're like, that would be really cool. I was like, oh, I was just kidding. I don't know how to do that yet. I said, I'll find a way. I'm sure there's a way I can make this possible. So I did some research, and my 3D thing that I kind of had in the back burner, I didn't ever think that my 3D art could mesh into photography. Those vines there are totally fake, by the way. That was a 3D object that I made and inserted into the photo. So yeah, so I'm brainstorming, thinking, okay, we're going to make this work. We're going to figure out how to make a lightsaber. They don't have a lightsaber. I got to make a lightsaber. I got to make it look real, not like a cheesy thing that I just copied and pasted from Google Images. And we're going to make it something that they like. And so I found out that I could make lightsabers in my 3D program. They're actually really easy. And I learned how to make the glow. I learned how to insert it into Photoshop as a two-dimensional, just an image layer. And just kind of this process of really just troubleshooting and trying to find out a way to do what I want to do in my head and getting it to actually happen in real life. So I did their wedding, and it was a hit. It looked great, and they loved it. And a few weddings later, and next thing you know, I'm on the news. And San Antonio Express News and also KINS 5 covered me because of my Star Wars wedding work. And this was right before Star Wars Episode 7 came out late in 2015. So, all the news people, they're looking for Star Wars-y stuff to put on the news. And they came across me actually through the San Antonio Photography Facebook group, which I'm really active in. And so they found me, and, so it was really cool. I had like 25,000 views the first few weeks on that video of the news bit. I wasn't on the news, but they showed pictures and they talked about me. So that was really, that was just amazing. I couldn't believe it. And I got a wedding out of it, so that was cool. It was also a Star Wars wedding, so just kind of, it just picks up momentum. These little steps towards your goal or towards your client, towards your target audience, towards your specialty. These little steps will snowball. And if you don't quit, and if you stay inspired and get help from other people, you can really keep that momentum building and building, and you can become an expert in whatever that thing is. Or you can find something that you enjoy that also pays the bills. So sometime around 2016, my friend Nate back there, who's recording, thank you Nate for coming tonight. We said, hey, let's go to Comic-Con. And in case you don't know what Comic-Con is, it's a convention downtown San Antonio that a bunch of nerds like myself go to. Some of them dress up in wild costumes. Other people just go to buy overpriced, merchandise. There's also celebrities and big movie trailer reveals and stuff like that. So I don't even know the numbers, but anywhere from 20 to possibly 20,000 people come on a weekend for the big conventions. So don't drive downtown when there's a convention. You'll see strange people who might distract you from driving safely, and you'll also get stuck in traffic and pay way too much for parking. In fact, I think it's the Wendy's right across from Henry B. Gonzalez Center. Their parking goes to $50 per spot. Yeah, just because. Yeah, we went to our first convention, and I brought my camera. I was dressed as a Jedi, but I had my camera, and I said, I'm going to take some pictures of these people. This is cool. I've never taken pictures of people in costume. Never done pictures of all this wild stuff. And so I did some pictures, and they came out pretty decent. And I said, these are cool. They're on anybody been to the Henry B. Gonzalez Center? You know how it's a convention floor, that huge open space. It's like a football, bigger than a football floor. That's where they have this. What's that?
Did they let you with the camera?
They did, yes.
They did not let people go with camera. You have to need pass or press pass.
Yeah. Yeah, they're getting more strict now. And I know Alamo City Comic-Con is not very photography friendly anymore. I went to San Japan and PAX South, which are the other conventions in town, and no problem.
Yeah. And because I was a photographer,
they didn't let you in?
They let me
Okay, good.
Red
Yeah,
camera thing.
there's rules and there's things like that, and things are getting stricter and stricter as what I do has become more and more popular. You know, it's kind of like they're sort of pushing back against it, and some of the conventions, not all of them. But what I do now is I don't even go into the convention anymore because you know, I did these photos on what's called the con floor, the convention floor. I just ask random people, hey, I love your costume. I'm a photographer. Would you mind if I take a photo and I'll send it to you for free? And you know, free sells, so it doesn't pay your bills, but it'll get you some attention. So they love that. So I took pictures of people for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours straight. And it was really fun. It was my first experience. But after looking at the photos, I said, you know what? I can do better than this, but I can't do it inside that building with the lovely tungsten lighting from the ceiling. You know, it looks disgusting. And people in the background everywhere, and you know, there's distractions, and I can't get a good spot because I'm bumping into people. I said, what can I do to improve this? What can I do to take these cool photos to an awesome level? So now I don't go into the convention at all. I stay outside the Henry B. Gonzalez Center, which, by the way, is a beautiful place. You just walk from the front of Henry B. around the corner down the river and then to the tower. You will have hit about 20 different photo locations on that walk. It is beautiful. It's just like 10 feet. Every 10 feet there's a nice little spot, whether it's trees or stone or water. Really unique. So I use those outside spots at the Henry B. for these photo shoots. Some of them are mixed in here. This is kind of a random grouping of photos. But yeah, so now what I do, what I'm really known for, is I go to these conventions. There's 3 of them a year. There's PAX, which is video games in January. And then there's Alamo City Comic Con, which is kind of comic related. And then there's San Japan, which is anime. These people, like these superhero characters, come with, you know, really well done costumes. Some of them not so much, but I try to go for the ones with the better costumes. And I say, hey, I'm going to photograph you at 9 a.m. right here. I send them a GPS coordinate. They meet me there, and I do a 20-minute photo shoot of them. And then I have a 10-minute break, and then I do the next one. And then a break, then the next one. And at San Japan last month, I did 24 of these in 2 days, 2 days span. So I'm shooting all morning long, and it is really fun. It's really fast. George came and helped. He was one of my awesome assistants that came just move lights around, which made my photo shoot so much easier. But he kind of got to see how it all works, and Nate also comes with me and helps. He videos the stuff sometimes. So it's really fun for me because that's just what I like. That's how I work. My kind of having that pressure of speed and time coming up actually helps me. And it's ironic because I get some of my best photos done in just 20 minutes time. This is one of the many photo shoots that I have, well, not this one. But yeah, so I do these and it's really fun. And I've become known. A lot of the cosplayers in our area know me as like the go-to guy for these kinds of photos. So when they're coming to a convention, they know that Daniel Grove is like top of the line, and they're going to come to me, and because they want my work. They've seen my work for years. I post on these groups, and they trust me. They've got that reputation, which is really important. You know, social media posting, keeping up. There's another convention shoot of one of my friends actually, and posting regularly throughout the week is really important for establishing a reputation. You know, if you're not on Instagram, I know it's kind of one of those younger people things, but get on Instagram, learn the basics. Here's a really awesome tip. Oh, real quick. These are poses that I plan ahead of time. So before I go to these photo shoots, I actually have things sketched out and drawn so that this 20 minutes actually is really quick. I'm not thinking, what do I want to do next? How should I pose them? I don't know what this character does. I actually spend time doing homework at home before the photo shoot, and I do these things, and it really helps. I'm just like, okay, we're doing this one, pose them, take a few photos, and get a good one. Okay, let's do this next pose, and do it. It's really, really quick and efficient. If you don't know how to draw, you can learn, or you can save photos on Pinterest or Google Images of a pose you like, and have it on your phone ready. Just a little tip that might work for some of you, might not work for some of you. So social media is really important for establishing that believable reputation. And I was telling the guys earlier, I'm recently, I've got kind of a slow season right now, coming out of the summer, summer lull for me. And so I've been posting photos that are 2 to 3 years old that I did a long time ago that are still good, I still enjoy, and people think I'm busy. And they say, oh, Daniel Grove, he's that busy photographer, he's so awesome, he's always doing shoots. I'm not. I'm really not. But because I have regular posting, people believe that, and that's okay. I'm not lying. I'm not saying I'm doing shoots every day, but it kind of looks like it. So people come to me because they trust me and they see that I have a consistent style and a consistent level of quality that they want. That last shoot and this shoot, the backgrounds are completely false. Also this one. Fun composites, which we'll get into in a little bit, talking about some nitty-gritty Photoshop techniques that I use to make some of my images possible. So currently what I focus on with my business is I'm trying to market towards families that have kids. You saw some of those little cute princess photos. I'm trying to find those families that love Disney, that love Avengers, that love all the Power Rangers and stuff like that. And I say, hey, I can do some awesome photos for your kids that you won't get anywhere else. And they'll pay for it. So I'm trying to find my target audience. That's one of my target audiences is families with kids that like this kind of stuff. Because if their kid loves it, the parents are going to pay for it eventually. And you know, there's not a lot of other people that do what I do in the area, so that makes it kind of easy too. I don't have too much competition. Other things that I do is I'll book full photo shoots. You know, I don't just do these little tiny 20-minute things at conventions. I'll actually plan like a full-on photo shoot. They're paying full price. I'm not cutting any corners. I have a location picked out that's free, legal, and public, and that we'll shoot there. And you know, I plan poses ahead of time. I come up with things that match their character. Or if it's not a character shoot, if it's just a theme, like I want a ethereal, fairy, kind of magical photo shoot with a long white dress. Like that's cool. I'll do that. And I come up with concepts ahead of time that kind of reflect that and get that vision across. So we'll do those full photo shoots on location, which is sort of what actually right there, sort of what I was talking about, the white dress fairy photo shoot. That's funny timing. Other thing that I do is themed portraits. Like this is more of a theme. This isn't a character. This isn't from a show or a movie. This is just an idea, just a visual theme. And I really like those. And if you've never done those, I encourage you to look up some ideas online and try to make a project just to challenge yourself. Do something different. And you might like what you find. Some of the other fun things that have come across my desk as becoming an expert on this kind of stuff is other photographers who are much better than me will hire me to edit their photos, which is really cool because they know that I can do stuff in Photoshop that maybe they can't do or they just don't have time to do. And they see my work and they say, I want like Daniel's touch on my photos. So they'll pay me and we work out the whole rights issues of what I can't post, what I can post, and the fee for different kinds of edits because they're all different. An edit like this, like that, literally probably would take me 5 minutes. That much longer because that lightsaber is not real. So it really depends. Like I've spent 4 hours on an image and I spent 5 minutes on an image. Like that probably would have taken me 10, 15 minutes maybe. So I've gotten quicker, but just saying sometimes a photo will take a long time. So I have to get an idea of what they want and then I charge them accordingly because that's what they're getting. So that's a big honor to have these big photographers. Like I've got one in Austin that's paid me a few times to edit their studio shoots, and it's really fun working on someone else's photos. It's really a different experience. All right, so let's get into, before we move on to the process, so how I actually make these photos, like in Photoshop and shooting. Does anyone have any kinds of questions, anything come up to your mind? No? Good. Yes?
I have a question, and it centers on releases.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see the folks at one of these conventions and you ask them, I'll take a photo and I'll give you the image for free,
Mm-hmm.
and then you want to use it in something else, have you gotten a release from them so that you can use that for other things?
I've actually been slack on that. I should have them fill out a model release. That's what you should do. That outlines that you own the copyright, that just says what you can do with the photo is pretty much anything because you own it. You took it, you own it. And it also says what they can't do. So you should have some way to copy that and give them a copy. That's like the best way. I don't do that. So I'm slacking on that, and I'm glad you brought that up because I need to come up with some kind of system for that. I do tell them, I say, is it okay if I post this to my social media, and I'll give you a copy with my logo, and it's kind of like they get the smaller size with the logo, and in the email I make sure to outline what they can and cannot do with the image. But you're right, I should do a model release, and that's the best thing to do. If you're shooting on the street, getting random strangers, you need to have a model release to protect yourself.
Then I have one other question. When we see these images, and they're all awesome.
Thank you.
They're very inspirational.
Thank you.
Trying to do different things in photography. So if you look at this one there, about on the average, how much is Photoshop, and then how much is actually in your image?
Real versus fake? Yeah. Practical, yeah. In the movie world, we call it practical effect. So a practical effect is something you're actually doing on location. Like I really have a fog machine going, or I really have red light on behind their head. So that's a practical effect, and then there's the post work, which is Photoshop. So it really varies. Like this is a totally digital background. I try to do as much as I can in person, but really that is kind of limited to just light, limited to lighting, and limited to color gels. I do a lot of that for some of my characters. But that's really all I can do. I mean, I don't have fairies to fly around in a photo set, so a lot of it is faked. That's also a fake background. So I don't know how to really answer that, but it really depends on the image. But
I think that's phenomenal, the Photoshop work that you're able to do. That's just
thanks. It's an ongoing process. I'm really learning Like, I try to look at bad examples of composites and bad examples of faked imagery and realize, why is it bad? Oh, it's because that background is perfectly in focus and it wouldn't be like that in a real situation. So then I learn, okay, well, I need to blur my backgrounds a little bit based on how close I am to the subject, what the f-stop was, depth of field stuff. So that's just one aspect that I'm emulating, is depth of field in my composites. It's super important. And if you have something in the middle behind the background and behind the person, if something's in the middle, it's going to be half as blurred as the final background. So you're going to have to think in a three-dimensional space. That's my daughter.
And do you also have a studio?
I don't.
A lot of these are outdoor locations, but do you also have a studio that you use?
I don't use studios. I've done two actual studio photo shoots to date. And in the end, I did the same thing that I do to these photos. So it's kind of the end result is the same. And it doesn't really save much time on the workload because I'm still cutting around the edges, I'm still masking. So it doesn't really speed it up if I have a green screen or not. I haven't really found too big of a difference. That right there is one of my favorite families. That's Nate's family. Every year they come to me with a theme for their Christmas photo, and it's always super fun. That was noir. We did a 50s noir, 30s, 40s, 50s kind of thing. Or not 50s, more 30s, 40s. Super fun, Sunset Station. So yeah, I don't do studio work. I have a backdrop that's portable, and I have speed lights on my stands and my diffuser. So I could do a studio photo shoot if someone really wants. And I actually have someone that insists that I do that next week, so I'm going to do it. We're doing high key which is a white background, very bright. So I'm doing that, but I don't really specialize in that. And honestly, when people come to my site and they see what I do, they don't really see studio work. They see all of this wild stuff, and that's what they want. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I know you do a lot of stuff outside on locations, and you mentioned that most of it is free.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do you get that? Because a couple of places where I've tried to do
are not
stuff
free.
It's like,
Nope, and that has come up quite a bit in the San Antonio photography group. I don't know if you guys have seen that. There's been a few posts about not paying for permits and whatnot. So there's really only a handful of locations that charge for a permit. Most of them are city-owned spots, historical sites like the Missions, Japanese Tea Gardens, the art museum, things like that. We all know they charge, and you should pay them. Cover your bases and support them and do it right. But the locations that I use for these photo shoots are really strange, random places. This photo shoot, which is one of my favorites, was done right below 35 in the Selma area. When you're driving, let's say you're going south, you're leaving Schertz, you're going on 35, and you pass over the big, it's like a creek. It's in like the Selma area, and there's a bedrock, just like this rock formation under there. And I drove by one day and I saw, I was like, what's that rock down there? That could be cool. So I stopped another day and I took some panorama photos with my phone, and that was the spot. This spot is in the forest on Thousand Oaks and 35. I asked for permission for that nuts and bolts company right there, and they said, sure, you can shoot there. Just be aware of homeless people if they're there, but they're never there. So I drive around a lot. My day job, I actually have a full-time job. I'm an ATM technician. So, and somehow I do all this on the side. I don't know how I've managed to do it. That's why I'm always up to like 1 a.m. editing. But I drive a lot for my day job, which means I'm seeing the city like all day long. And I take mental notes, or sometimes literal notes, and sometimes even a GPS location in Google Maps, and I'll save it. So later I can come back and revisit it. I can really check it out, make sure it's safe, make sure it's accessible, and like if something really bad happened, what will we do? And also if it's private property is the biggest thing. Obviously I'm scoping out for that. But a lot of my spots are public property. They're safe. They have good visibility. People can see where we are. This is a drainage ditch in Universal City, right by where I live. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but lots of open areas. Parks. I use lots of parks. Spots on the side of the road that aren't really specifically or clearly owned or marked by anybody. I look around for do not trespass signs. I see when I turn around. But if I don't see one, then I feel pretty clear conscience shooting there, as long as it's not infringing on anyone's privacy or neighborhoods or anything like that. So yeah, I'm always looking. I'm always scouting locations that really never ends. As I walked into the building, I took some panoramas of that front entrance because it's beautiful, and I've never been here before, which is shameful. But I'm already brainstorming. How can I get permission to do an engagement shoot here? So yeah, I love location scouting. Because I'm a location photographer, my brain's always in that gear of what's the next beautiful spot that I can use. But also I like to be unique. As you can tell, my photography is pretty darn unique, but I like my locations to be unique as well. So I try to use spots that are not populated by photographers everywhere, like the Pearl. I love the Pearl. I'll do shoots in the Pearl any day, but you all know everybody else is doing the same thing too. So I try to avoid those popular spots for that reason, because everyone's photo is going to look like that. You know, everyone, by now, a lot of people have got the cool Pearl photos already done. And I try to find the less loved and less appreciated holes in the wall spots around town that I can make some art in. And I think I'm doing pretty good so far. And it's fun too, because I'm putting thought into the planning of these locations. And when I take the client there, they're like, what is this place? Like, where am I? How are you going to take photos here? And I say, just trust me. And we make awesome photos, and they're like, that place is phenomenal, you know? And every time they drive by, they remember it. So it adds a little special touch to my photo shoot, because I'm putting the thought into it, and it pays off. I'm not just spending all this time at night planning and then nothing happens. Like it is adding to the quality of my photography, and my clients notice it, and they know it. So like I said earlier, I'm doing some character research depending on who the person is, or maybe what the look is. If they're going for a certain movie character, I might watch the movie, or at least like binge watch a bunch of little clips about this movie to be familiar with it, so that I know what the goal is and what style. Does this character act silly? Then I'll do some funny poses. Are they like stone cold face? Are they like super serious? Then I'll do that. And I do a little bit of homework behind the scenes to make sure things are authentic. And I think my customers really appreciate the authenticity, because when I do these convention shoots, there are characters you will never hear of, names you can't even pronounce, and shows you probably never want to watch. But hey, they're paying me, and I'm the photographer, so I'm not going to say, I don't like your show, I'm not going to shoot you. I'll shoot them. But I don't know what that show is about. I don't know what this character does or doesn't do. Do they have special powers? Or are they just a normal human? I need to know these things. So I do some homework, and it really pays off, because they see the photos and they're like, that's exactly what that character would have done. Or this special, this energy blast like that. This timing is really great. So they'll say, that energy blast looks just like the show, or it looks cooler than the show. So that dynamic is really great to have with my clients. They appreciate that I'm making things as authentic and realistic as I can. So as for tools, I use Lightroom and Photoshop, obviously. I mean, there's people, maybe someone here, does anyone not use Photoshop and Lightroom for their work? No? Everyone's an Adobe addict? Cool. Me too. I love them. I wish they didn't charge every month, but it's whatever. So I use Lightroom for my photographic, I call it photographic editing, because I'm editing the photograph itself. I'm enhancing and kind of fixing exposure if I need to. You can't do special effects work in Lightroom, so I just do the photo part. And then I export it as a JPEG, and then I bring that JPEG into Photoshop, and that's where the real magic happens if I need to do it at all. Like this photo, I just did barely any retouching, and it looked great. I didn't add that purple on her or that blue on her. It's actually a color gel on my Speedlight. So as far as hardware that I use $60 Yongnuo Speedlights for all the stuff. I don't use strobes. I could, and I would definitely have some benefits if I did use real strobes. But all the stuff is done with super cheapo Speedlights and color gels. And I have a Yongnuo transmitter, which is about this big, and it goes on top of my camera. When I take the shot, radio signal controls the Speedlight, and they all fire. And I can control the power of each Speedlight independently on that little box on top of my camera. So I can turn them up or down, whatever I want. And it is awesome. I love it. I love using off-camera lighting when it's necessary and when it's needed. I love it. I don't always use it, but I do when I'll use it if I have to. And it can really add a lot of dynamics to your photos. Adding a splash of blue behind them if they're wearing red, or adding purple on their back wall. I shot a Joker and a Harlequin, which is Joker, bad guy of Batman series, and he had vape. He was a vapor, the guy. So he's spewing out this huge trail of vape smoke. And I had a green gel on my Speedlight way behind him, and the light went through the fog. And what happens when light goes through fog and smoke? It lights it up, because those particles just bounce around the photons and they glow. So this green light was going through the fog, and it looked like he was shooting out green, like fire smoke out of his mouth. And it's so awesome. Adding a little bit of backlight can really add some magic and some wow, some pizzazz to your photos. I use, for my main light, I use a 26-inch Westcott Rapid Box, which is an octagon. I call it an octabox. And it's not even that big. It's 26 inches. It's like 2 feet barely, just over 2 feet, but it gets some great light. I love that thing. I use it on all these photos are done with a 26-inch octabox and maybe one extra Speedlight behind them, like rim light, backlight, or a little bit of side light. So I'm really not using a complicated setup, and it's very portable. When I do these con shoots, this is done at Henry B. Gonzalez Center. I obviously took out the background, but it was right below the tower, I think, when I took that photo. So when I do these con shoots, people like Nate and George and other photographers that come to assist, I just have them moving the lights around and changing out the gel or angling the light up or down a little bit. And those little changes really help. But it's a very simple and portable setup, which I like. Hope they're okay. So early on in my creative photography, when I had kind of gotten rocking and rolling and sort of discovered that it was even possible and that I really enjoyed it and that other people enjoyed it, I hated composites. I was like, no, I'm not doing composites. They're too much work. They look cheesy. They look awful. We remember you've seen the old sci-fi movies like the old Superman where he's flying and it's green screen because it looks awful. The edges are not right. The lighting is off. The color temperatures don't match. It's a faked green screen video or photo. And so I just avoided that kind of stuff for a few years. But eventually I was getting more competent in Photoshop and I kind of learned how to do better cutting. I learned how to fake color temperature. I learned color grading and other, those adjustment layers. If you don't know what adjustment layers are, just go learn those tonight. I have a video on my YouTube channel. If you look up Daniel Grove Photo on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel. And one of my videos that I wish everyone would watch if they don't know is how to use adjustment layers. Because they're awesome, they're non-destructive, and there are some really great tools in Photoshop that you may not have even used because maybe you're intimidated, maybe there's just a too long list, you just don't touch it, you miss out on a lot. Don't let Photoshop intimidate you because it is the best tool you can have. So I avoided composites like the plague until I finally got better at the Photoshop side and I said, all right, let me give it a try. Maybe I can pull it up. Maybe I can make it actually look good and not cheesy like those bad examples that I saw. And it wasn't too great at first, but now I've gotten better and better. I'm still learning things. There's photographers that I follow. There's one in Houston, there's one in Seattle that does phenomenal composites. I look at them, I'm like, how do they do this stuff? I need to learn from them. And I study their photos as much as I can. And sometimes if I have a relationship, I'll ask them, hey, how did you do this thing? Would you mind sharing any tips? And that's another way that I learn is actually connecting with other photographers that I want to be like. So I just slowly got better and better. So some of the tools that I use in Photoshop is the quick selection brush. This is, at least on my computer, it's W. It's one of the W options. There's a few different selection tools. One of them is quick selection. So I'm literally just clicking and dragging around their body and it automatically draws the outline around their body. You can refine it, you can tweak it, you can fix it because it's not going to be spot on all the time. But that quick selection brush is my very first starting point if I'm doing a composite. Now, if it's just a photo like this, I just added the lasers and I added an overlay of sparks and some fog, and I was done. Oh, and some motion blur too. But that's not a composite. That's a composite as far as the background. I just slapped a photo of some techno stuff on. I put it on top of the wall, and that was it. So I'm not always cutting people out. I did. I made those buildings from scratch actually in 3D. So I use a program called Blender, which is freeware, and you can do, there's a movie on Netflix that was made in Blender. It's that good, and it's free. It's incredible. So I use it for a lot of my props, my 3D props that are not real. And so I couldn't find background images of a futuristic skyscrapers that matched the perspective that I wanted, because for that photo you saw with that soldier where he's reaching, it's from Halo, it's a popular video game. For that space soldier guy that's reaching for the camera, I was recreating the cover art of the video game. And there's no way I was going to actually use the image and then put my person on top. Like, that's not cool. That's not original. It's probably also not legal because it's copywritten. So I said, okay, I got to make my own background. So I'm looking for almost a whole day. I looked for background pictures of skyscrapers, and none of them were futuristic, and none of them were at the right perspective. So I said, all right, I just got to make this thing. I got to make it myself because no one's doing it. I got to do it myself. So I started building buildings kind of like, well, not like Legos, but building them out of cubes, adding details, adding textures, whatever, in my 3D program. And eventually I got to a point where it looked good. And then Photoshopping on top of that kind of increased the realism. And I added some shadow, added some highlights to really further add some more realism. So yeah, so that background was fake, and it's probably one of my favorites because I worked so dang hard on it. And there's actually a time lapse of me making that photo. If you go to my YouTube, there's a time lapse of me making the city, photoshopping the city in, doing the rest of it. There's a lot of layers. There's probably like 50 layers on that image. A lot of snow and particles in the air. So so another technique that I use in Photoshop is masking, which is basically how you cut away the background without destroying it. I'm not using the eraser tool because once you erase something, it's erased. You can't bring it back. So I use masking to draw people out and make them a foreground element. Then I can put whatever I want behind them. And that's that. Sometimes I cut out people from the background and I put them on a top layer just so that I can affect the background only. Like I might want the background to be colder. So I'll cut them out, put them on top, and then I use a curves or a color balance on just the background layer to make it colder or darker. And that's a really nice technique. When you just make the background darker, it really makes your person look brighter. That relative brightness effect in our human vision of our brain really enhances. And I do that a lot. I think that photo was done. That photo too. The background was a very bright stone. And I said, it's too bright. It's too happy. This needs to be gritty and dark. So I selected just the background and I dropped it down with some curves, and it made it. That's what I was going for. Because color and brightness really affect the tone and the emotion of a photo. So I focus a lot on those two things. Like I said, adjustment layers are a huge thing that takes my photo to the next level. Clipping layers, which is, I'm still kind of wrapping my head around what a clipping layer is, but basically if I have someone on a layer that's just them, not the background, so they're cut out, just imagine a person, you know, whatever, and they're just cut out on the top layer. If you add a clipping layer on top of that, whatever you paint onto that clipping layer will only affect the person's layer. You know, normally when you paint across, it's going to paint over everything. But if I paint onto a clipping layer, the paint pixels will only show up on top of that person's layer, wherever their body is, not onto the background. So how I use that is I'll use that to fake shadow. So I'll put a clipping layer on top of them, and if I paint softly black or dark brown or dark blue around their edges, I'm adding contour. It's like makeup, really. It's like adding contour to your cheekbones. I'm adding fake shadow around their edges of their body to make something look brighter over here and make it darker here. Or if someone has a blue lightsaber, I want some blue glow to be on their body, because that's just how lightsabers would work, I assume. So here's that Joker and Harley shoot. That turned out phenomenal. It was about 50 degrees outside. It was January. First shoot of last year. So cold, but I told them, guys, just trust me. It's going to be worth it. We're like shaking. My fingers are barely working on the shutter. So clipping layers, I use... Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's one. That's not even the one that I was talking about, but that is a good example. The other one, I think my Joe was pointing right at the smoke, and it was just like bright green. It was so cool. I don't know where that file went. I didn't keep track of that one shoot. I'm very, very meticulous about my file backup and my organization, but except for that one photo. Other things that I use, dodging and burning. You may have heard of dodging and burning is where you're adding shadow or adding highlight, kind of what I was just talking about. The way that I do that, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. The way that I like to do it is by using a curves adjustment layer on top of the layer that I want to affect, and I drop the curve down to a darker, a downward negative slope on the curves, so it makes everything darker. But the mask I invert the mask, and then I can paint in white where I want the darker curve to affect. So I'm really only painting in a darker curve settings to wherever I paint with a soft brush. And that's how I like to add shadow. Opposite is true. If I make an upward curve and paint it in using masking, then I can add a highlight to wherever in the image that I want to add it. The last thing that I use is custom brushes. I've only made a few. I realized that circular brush in Photoshop just wasn't soft enough. It's kind of like a spherical soft brush. So I learned how to make my own brushes, which is really not even that hard. It's quite easy. And I made a super soft brush. So there's like white in the middle and just really fades out. And I use that for retouching. I use it for all kinds of stuff. So some other brushes that I made, which I would be glad to share with you guys, is I made a lightning brush set. So I got free royalty-free images of lightning, and I turned them black and white, and I turned them into Photoshop brushes so I could paint lightning onto whatever I wanted. I did this for a photo shoot where a Star Wars character, bad guy, was shooting lightning out of her hands at the dude, and I said, I need lightning, and I don't want to just keep putting layers and images on top. I need a brush. So I turned the images into brushes, and I could paint on lightning, and I still have it. I've used it on multiple photo shoots now. If you guys want that, I'll send you the Photoshop file for that, or the brush file for that. So custom brushes has been really helpful, and also looking up other brushes online. I use a few of them. I'm not really I don't use presets. I use a few actions, but they're only for little tasks that I do over and over. Like oh yeah, that was one that got on the news. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Yeah, I don't use presets or actions, except for a few little minute tasks that I do over and over, but they're not really I don't have like an action to make something look sci-fi. I don't have an action to make something look like a fantasy film. I just do it myself. That's just how I like to do it. I like to control and edit. I'm a big tweak head, so I like to do it myself. So that's about it for that part of the talk. In closing, I'll just say that, my goals, even though I've been successful, at least visually, like I said, I'm not making a lot of money off this yet, but I've been successful as far as the community is concerned. People know that I do this stuff and they like my stuff and it's going, but I still have bigger goals. I've always got goals pulling me through each stage, and if you don't have goals that pull you to the next stage, you just stay stagnant and you get bored, or you get burnt out, or you won't meet new clients, or you won't make anything interesting. So my next goal is to become a household name for this kind of stuff. So I want, if someone has Power Ranger birthday party for their 6-year-old. I want them to know like Daniel Grove is going to do amazing Power Ranger photos of my kid and make him look like a superhero. And we're going to hire him because he's the best in town. So I want to be a household name for this stuff. That's one of my goals. And I want to be the go-to guy for these conventions. I want people at conventions to know like Daniel Grove's a dude for this kind of work. And I'm getting there. When I'm doing these shoots at conventions, I have people come up to me and say, hey, are you Daniel Grove? Or, hey, I follow you on Instagram. You know, it's really fun because I'm kind of getting that full circle of all my social media work that I've been putting into it. It's paying off because people know my name and they recognize me when I'm doing photo shoots. And my last goal is I want to bring these compositing techniques. There's one with the lightning. I want to bring these compositing techniques into video. I want to learn to make these like realistic moving video files of these special effects. And I've already done a few. I've had a few animated photos, but it's a fun challenge. So I'm always trying to improve my technique and learn things that make things more real and more wow and just really stand out. Did anyone, before I'm done, do you guys have any more questions popped up?
Yeah, how do you deal with the copyright issues? Because you've got obvious, recognizable things from Star Wars,
Yeah.
and other things.
Yeah, so if I am selling myself as a Star Wars photographer, I'm crossing a line. So I can't advertise myself as the Star Wars photographer. That would be using intellectual property, which is the Star Wars brand and franchise. So I can't advertise myself as that. But if they see that I do it, they can come and they'll pay me and I can do it. And also a lot of these 3D things that I'm making are custom made. So I'm not copying off of Google Images.
Because it looks like if you have the Millennium Falcon in the back or other things, they may say, hey.
They could, yeah. There's a small risk of that, of them, someone raising a stink about it. But as far as I'm concerned, you know, I'm making these things from scratch, and even though it is recognizably and obviously the Millennium Falcon, which I guess is intellectual right somewhere somehow. Yeah, I haven't gone through that whole process yet.
Good thing to go for.
Yeah, I did have a lawyer contact me. He's like, hey, I love your stuff. Just want to let you know, you might be like, you might get conquered by Disney. Yeah.
If some photographers of my work had stuck it in there,
Yeah.
they don't want it.
True.
Hey, you want to give me credit? But I mean, if you have a costume, that's different.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I do my best to make things from scratch or use royalty-free images. Like my backgrounds, I found a number of websites that offer totally royalty and credit-free photos, which just blows my mind. Like,
But do they allow you to use it to sell?
yeah, they have commercial-free. I don't know what it's called. You can use it for commercial uses. You don't have to give credit. There's a number of those stock photo websites. So, you know, I thought I'd have to pay for every photo I could find, like iStock. What is it called? iStock Photo? iPhoto Stock? One of those. But no, there's free websites out there that I use when I need like a landscape or I need a rock pile. You know, I use those websites for that, and it's been great. Or I'll take my own photos if I'm out and doing nature photo shoots or, you know, shooting some construction site. I'll take photos of stuff and I'll use it later. Anybody else? Yeah, that's about it. I guess I did a good job, but there's not a lot of questions. Awesome.
Daniel, in appreciation of your gracious gift of time, attention, thoughtfulness, and kindness, thank
you
from the grateful members of Photo.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you, guys.